got your supplements and functional foods, legal developments, ingredient news, education, inspiration, entertainment, insider in the afternoon.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Insider in the Afternoon. Todd Runestad here, your host. Nice to see you. And it was nice to see some of you at Natural Products Expo East last week. Yes, live events are happening. Kind of nice. Everyone's masked up and vaxxed up and doing business, having a good time. And so the show today, we're going to take a big chunk of it. And I had an interview with book author Todd Pesek, an MD, who wrote the book, Eat Yourself Super. And so we're going to have a really cool conversation with there and a little hint. He's got the new food guide pyramid. So that's really interesting to see. And the other thing that I thought I would do today is just go through a little presentation that I had. I'm going to boil it down pretty quick here and kind of give us some insights on the state of the supplements industry today. Everybody up for that? I know you are. So Charlie, let's go right over to that. We call it bottling joy. And it's really interesting to me. You know, supplements have always been kind of this like wink, wink, nod, nod sort of thing where, you know, you can't make drug disease claims. You have to make structure function claims. And so for the uninitiated, what that really means is you cannot say vitamin D cures the common cold, right? Because look at any supplement box and it says, you know, this product has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Common cold is a disease, and you can't say vitamin C cures the common cold, but you can, through structure function claims, say it supports a healthy immune system. A softer claim right there, and that's what you can get away with. But there's this new thing that's happening today where the like just the name of products are going to things that like aren't even structure function claims. And so really interesting what's happening. And I'm going to walk you through it a little right now. So the big thing that's happened obviously in the last like year or two has been COVID, right? It's all in our face. And so this is an interesting slide deck. These are representative examples of some of the best or emblematic supplements that are in the biz. You see down there on the left, there's that Self Plus supplements. They have immunity plus energy. And I'm going to show you an example of one of the other SKUs that they have, but it's very immunity forward. So it's immunity plus energy, and then they'll have immunity plus relaxation, things like that. So very immunity forward. This 23 Vitals, that's the best product that I've seen. 23 ingredients, very much a kitchen sink style of ingredients, and a handful, I think a half a dozen branded ingredients. There's the Wellmune from Kerry Ingredients. There's Resistade from Lonza. That's a large arabinogalactan. Say that 5 times fast. Prebiotic and helps boost different aspects of the immune function, white blood cells, natural killer cells, things like that. So and it really addresses the spectrum of the innate and the adaptive immunity. So that's a really excellent powder product right there. I also wanted to point out the Barleans, the olive leaf extract. It's a spray, so like a nice thing where you don't have to take pills. And so that's really good. Olive leaf extract is kind of known as an antiviral, so that's really helpful. Then we got the Life Seasons Clinical Immunity Quick Start. Now, this won the Nexty Award for the best supplement of the year. And interesting thing about that. So first of all, you have to take 6 a day. So that's a lot, but it is intended to only be taken for a maximum of 10 days at a time. Now, usually with supplements, they want to get you on the subscription plan and have repeat buyers and just stay on it, but not so with this. And so this, like at the very first sign of sniffles or like what have you, you take this and it has, in particular, it has this special kind of vitamin C that is, it gets into your body quicker and it stays in your body longer. And it starts to activate the immune cells within 2 hours. So that's a real cool marketable difference there. So boom, right when you're feeling something coming on, you just like pile that on you. So really interesting innovation in the immunity market. Then the other product, the symbiotics, where where they're using probiotics and they use colostrum. Remember, like colostrum was big like 20 years ago, and it seemed to kind of go away, which is the first milk out of mothers when they give birth. This comes from bovine sources. And but it seems to work for humans as well. The last product there, that's the HTB Rejuvenate Superfood. This is from Jeff Bland, the smartest guy in the room, and that's Himalayan tartary buckwheat, and it's a good powder, and it's really good for just balancing and priming the immune system, and uses regenerative agriculture practices as well. So that's a cool product. So that was like the state of affairs with immunity as we saw it. The other thing that happened, the COVID-19 became the COVID-19. Remember, like the freshman 15, and so now there are all of these COVID adjacent conditions. So you don't have supplements that are addressing COVID. Like you couldn't say that even if you could. And there's been over 100 published research studies on vitamin D, and there's been, there's correlations with vitamin D levels and COVID outcomes. And then, vitamin D has been known to address upper respiratory tract infections and with coronaviruses, not specifically with the SARS-CoV-2, the one, but that's just a matter of time to suss that out. So really interesting research with vitamin D. And of course, there's zinc, which just prevents virus cells from replicating. So that's been one of those things that Fauci has been, advocating. And so now you're going to have a lot of these weight management. That is going to be a thing. So stock your shelves there, formulate products with there, because that is the thing. We've all just been sitting around the house for a year, right? So with that, with the larger weight management issue is keto and collagen. These are things that were booming, and like collagen has been growing at like 30% growth rate for like at least 5 years. And there's just no end in sight, it's a nice beauty from within. And women in particular produce less collagen than men. And so they're, generally a little more concerned about, beauty issues than men. And so there's been a lot of uptake about collagen and as a protein, and it's being marketed as keto. So definitely that is still out there, and we can expect to see more of that. So these other COVID comorbidities, which is a pre-existing health condition that makes you have a worse outcome with whatever like the primary diseases. So in this case, in the case of COVID, you would the prime three comorbidities is obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, which is a spectrum. So if you have any of those and then you get COVID, chances are you're going to suffer worse. You might even die, from COVID. And I even put vitamin D down there because there's this really, interesting correlations between blood levels of vitamin D of people presenting in hospitals and COVID outcomes. There was this one study in, I think it was Brazil, where 99% of the people who died had blood levels under 10 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D. And of those who presented with blood levels over 30, only 4% of them died. So very interesting stuff. There's definitely a correlation between vitamin D blood levels and COVID outcomes. So interesting stuff. So more COVID adjacent conditions are a lot of the conditions that were still kind of afflicting us before COVID hit. And so this is like stress, anxiety, and sleep issues. And these are the issues that made adaptogens so popular and what made CBD so popular. And so, CBD, its fortunes have kind of leveled out during COVID. It seemed like there was, consumers kind of had their budget for supplements, and there was kind of the flight toward immunity, and so a little away from CBD. But then I've talked to some retailers who have said, CBD started coming back because of these issues around stress and sleep and anxiety. So and then so there's this Immunity Plus in mind, as I referenced earlier. So that company very immunity forward. So and then so you're seeing just more of these issues of cognitive health, of the blues and the sleep, and just more representative examples that are out there. um Apple cider vinegar, big. And I I I've had a hard time coming to terms with it because it's vinegar. Vinegar belongs on the kitchen floor when you're going to mop the tiles, right? But so what they've done now is they're putting it in gummies, and the gummies, some of them, like it's more apple than anything else. And even yesterday, Enzymatica, they sent me a box, and I opened it up and I was like, oh, a little vinegary, but then I popped the gummy and very appley. So that was kind of cool, out there with the apple cider vinegar land. Then there's other things that are happening. This fruity, I'm going to say, it's gummies, but just with the fruit and none of the sugar. I think that's interesting. That High Alex, that's Care of personalized nutrition. So you go on websites, and with Care of, I think it was like 75 questions, and then they produce for you personalized nutrition. So I think that's really cool. And then that Happy Hoo Ha, just a fun way of communicating benefits. Look at all these different shots out there. Remember when it just used to be 5-hour energy? Now you have shots for all kinds of things that are out there. So I think you remember right before Expo, where Adrian Smith and I, we were like doing all those shots. Yeah, tons of shots out there. And so here it is. This is the money shot of joy, tranquility, optimism, serenity, not structure function claims. And who doesn't want a little peace and joy and tranquility and serenity? Like really interesting stuff out there of what's happening, communicating out there. Then this is from a transparency and a supply chain. You've got outcast of all, like, nutrients that come from like fruits and vegetables that don't make it into McDonald's, because they're not perfect, but it still has all the nutrition in them. The beef organs, regenerative agriculture, interesting stuff. And just the last thing here is we're starting to see like this boom in mushrooms and this boom in CBD. They're both, there's another mushroom out there and there's another cannabis out there of like the get high perspective. So it'll be interesting to see when they become normalized in health food stores or at a natural products expo. So that's a story from here. And so now we're going to run this interview that I did with Dr. Todd Pesek right now. Really interesting stuff right here. Charlie, roll 'em, and we'll catch you next week. Hi, this is Todd Runestad. Welcome to another edition of the Toddcast here on Insider in the Afternoon. Got a special guest today, Todd Pesek, MD. He's the author of the new book, Eat Yourself Super, One Bite at a Time. Todd, nice to have another Todd on the show. How are you?
Yeah, it truly is the Toddcast today, is it not?
Most definitely. So I read this book, and it's really interesting. You're an herbalist and a root doctor. What does this mean?
I'm an Appalachian root doctor who went to medical school. And, I've always been in touch with the fact that healing is a cosmic gift. And I also found it a bit paradoxical that the medical doctor is the epitome of health in Western culture, but that's why I chose to express healing in that fashion.
Yeah. So are you an herbalist? Are you like a fingers in the dirt herbalist? When I think root doctor, I think you're digging into terra firma here.
Well, I have a thriving medical practice with, over the years, between 12 and 15,000 patients, and I have them all, for the most part, off of medications and on the right food and herbs.
Yeah. So, it really is, in the original OG words of Hippocrates, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. So, let's talk about some of the foods. I'm guessing you're not putting people on cheese doodles.
No, absolutely not. I think that, there's widespread caloric excess and nutrient deficiency.
Yes.
And, the body necessarily eats for nutrients, not necessarily calories. And people have this tendency to overeat as they seek nutrients, but the foods that they're eating tend to be more caloric, less nutrient laden.
Right.
And so the body keeps eating.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And so I love that whole concept of we're sort of over calorified but under nutrified. Those aren't exactly the right words, but we eat too much but yet not enough. You know?
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people they're shocked by that when you first talk with them about it. But I use the analogy. It's like when's the last time you've eaten a cheese pizza? And they simply recount the last time, and I say a cheese pizza weighs 3 to 5 pounds. When's the last time you've eaten 3 to 5 pounds of broccoli? I mean, you just don't do it. Your
Right.
body will kind of shut that down because it's getting the nutrients that it needs. But it isn't only nutrient-dense, calorie-sparse foods. It's the right foods. Unfortunately, but true, we've moved away from our ancestral practices on a lot of different bases, and those ancestral practices are what basically kept us healthful for millennia. And a part of that really has to do with our bodies seeking the correct nutrients, the correct vitamins, the correct micronutrients, from nature. And it's those things that helped maintain our homeostasis and our physiologies optimally.
Yeah. So you talk in the book about diseases of affluence. To me, this is really pointed out with COVID, which is kind of like, it's a global litmus test that shows just how really unhealthy the human race is. You hear about comorbidities, the sort of pre-existing health conditions that make a disease worse. And so the big three comorbidities are obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And so many Americans have those things, which are diseases of the diet. They're diseases of affluence. Instead of eating 3 to 5 pounds of broccoli, we're eating 3 to 5 pounds of pizza, and we're having it delivered right to our door. We don't even have to go out and make it. So let's dig into these diseases of affluence. I mean, that gives us just foods that are crunchy and foods that are fat, but foods that are nutrient poor. Is that what we're talking here?
Yeah, I think, I want to stretch your mind a little bit with regard to the diseases, right?
Yeah.
Because yes, in fact, obesity, diabetes, these are real. But how did they get there? I mean, they got there from things that we do or don't do that our ancestors have done that drive the basic foundations for this disease process. For example, we're not running around naked in the sun like our ancestors, and so pretty much everybody has a vitamin D deficiency. And vitamin D is a fundamental precursor to most of those diseases of civilization that you mentioned. Vitamin D is really an epigenetic construct that enables you to express your genome and by doing so function optimally. And it also vitamin D is a hormone. It's not really a vitamin. It optimizes hormones, and I think when you talk about an excess of sugar and an excess of fat driving food addictions, it's much more complex than that. Our ancestors sought out foods in nature that were by definition high caloric foods, right?
Yeah.
But when they found them in nature, they were in very small amounts, right? So nutrient-laden fruits and berries with little sugar packets in them, or nutrient-dense tree nuts and tubers with healthful fat ratios, and so our bodies, evolutionarily speaking, went to those foods for sustenance. In those, we got nutrients as well, and so it was this reward that enabled us to survive as we went out and consumed our foodstuffs. Fast forward to today, those evolutionary drives are exploited by sugar and fat establishments. And there's pure sugar, pure fat that people are consuming and can't shut down that evolutionary drive. Simple little things like these ancestral practices and these ancestral processes that we need to dial back into can really help alleviate a lot of that. In large part, obesity is a very similar, phenomena, right? I mean, obesity is really a function of complex metabolic dysfunction, and it is real.
Well, and it's one of those things where it's like, obesity is a sign of that we're really successful, right? Like we have all the food that we need in order to survive in case we're not able to to capture the lion and eat it, so we can afford to put on a little fat, but you want to talk we've won that game and then some. Now just the fact that we're over fat, and it's like, and there's not going to be a food shortage. Like we're going to be able to keep catching the tiger. It's out at the grocery store. It's in the restaurant. Like food is not a problem. But here we are at Natural Products Expo, which is really I was just talking to someone that it's not so much, they were saying, we're not the nutrition, the natural products industry, we're the innovation industry. We're driving innovation in the food world. There's the conventional foods of the fat, the salty, the crunchy, and then there's the innovation of packaged foods, which is, well, let's start with the basis of nutrient-dense whole foods and build foods around there if you're not going to get it just raw, like raw nuts or berries. Let's create something based on mushrooms or maca or, any of these, maybe they're exotic, but they're certainly healthy, foods, and you can put it in beverages. So instead of sugar water, carbonated sugar water, let's have, something as simple as kefir or just like some engineered beverage, but it's got, mushrooms and adaptogens and things like that in it. That's healthier and no sugar, right?
Well, I'd like to comment on a couple of the things that you touched on there.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree that there isn't food shortage issues. There are.
Food deserts, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of complex issues in that. The wrong foods are being made widely available for people,
right.
And the right foods are hard to get. And I think A, but B, this innovation that you speak of is a huge part of the solution. I mean, we need to think beyond organic and beyond sustainable, and we need to empower all the peoples in all of their respective ancestral ways. And a simple aspect to that is connecting with the land. And I think the more people that connect with the land connect with each other, and everything that is, and that's authenticity, and that's really what I feel drives our industry. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see, so many diverse peoples with so many diverse backgrounds putting their heads together for innovation to kind of, one up really, food subjugation. I mean, because we've really been falsely marketed to, our children have been falsely marketed to on the basis of sugars and fats,
right.
And
right.
now we have these innovations that can give them the calorie sparse but nutrient dense crunch, right? And
right.
Kale chips instead of potato chips, blah blah blah. And
right.
these are things that we use to show people, to teach and enable people how easily and delicious it is to eat healthfully. And that's a part of my passion growing up on rural self-sustaining farm in Sweet Valley, Pennsylvania. That really imprinted me with this passion and purpose to travel the planet and learn from other traditions and peoples who live sustainably and utilize field and forest for food sustainably and also medicine. I think that as we grow as a global people, our way forward is empowering individuals in their own health and health care. And the way they empower themselves in their own health and health care is through connecting to the land, connecting to each other, understanding these simple solutions to eat more healthfully. But beyond that, as I had mentioned, we're not doing what our ancestors have done in terms of diet. We're not eating cyclically, forest foods, that support our microbiomes and our hormone arrays and so on and so forth. And so, what we need to do is complement our diet with whole foods-based, very appropriately done, essential dietary supplements, which I think are, hugely important and will play, much more sustainable and much more of a prominent role into our future than even pharmaceuticals. And you got to remember that, pharmaceuticals are largely derived from plants too, not little pharmaceuticals. I mean, I'm talking about blockbuster pharmaceuticals like, the number one diabetes drug out there, metformin, comes from French lilac. The first antihypertensive comes from, Rauwolfia, and the list goes on. So I think, it's unfortunate but true that interested business plays way too prominent a role in our food supply, but it's also true that pharmaceutical industries play way too prominent a role in standard of care medicine as well. Right. And I think that, we're onto that, and we're doing the things that we need to do to empower ourselves and others, to make these sustainable, simple solution-based adjustments that are both easy and delicious through, appropriate diet and lifestyle modifications, and then also helping to mitigate those diseases of civilization through smart supplementation as well.
And so here's the book, Eat Yourself Super. One thing I want to point out is you have this really great food guide pyramid. There's the typical agribusiness one that's just like, oh, let's put cheap refined carbs at the bottom, like fat, crunch, sugar, that stuff. This is the real healthy one. We don't have time to get into it, but I think that's up on the screen, and so you can see that here. I do want to finish with Nutritional Roots is when you talk about smart supplementation. Now, this has got 42 billion CFUs of probiotics, of a blend of probiotics. What were you looking to develop with this brand?
So along with the healthy diet and lifestyle, I also advocate for smart supplementation. And one of the key supplements that I think people should be taking is a probiotic. And the reason for that, again, is we're not doing what our ancestors have done. Our ancestors ate plenty of dirty vegetables, basically, and so on those dirty vegetables, they got their homeostatic soil organisms, and the dirty vegetables were sometimes fermented and or even rotten on parts, and those are all healthful aspects to our microbiome, right? And so in our development of Nutritional Roots Probiotics Plus, we really wanted to give people a one capsule solution that had all of this stuff, and I think we nailed it. So what really sets our probiotics apart is the fact that, well, first of all, we're a symbiotic, so we have all the
pre
food,
and pro,
all the food for the 100 trillion friends you didn't even know you had, right? And then we have what I feel is the classic triad of microorganisms in here, plus homeostatic soil organisms that can transit and colonize more successfully the small intestine. Yeah. And there's a lot of great science coming out, in particular on bifido, that lends a lot of support to what we already know, and that the gut-brain axis is incredibly important in health. And so we wanted to make sure that we included a lot of those strains. The mechanism by which this is occurring is appropriate colonization can actually enhance vagal stimulation. So that's your vagus nerve. This is why things like deep breathing and meditation and yoga help you. And that is why we named our probiotic Belly Laughs.
That's right, the gut-brain axis.
That's right.
I love it. Belly Laughs. That's funny. That's good. That's the story from here. That's all we have time for. Todd Pesek, the author of Eat Yourself Super, and also a formulator of Nutritional Roots brand. Belly Laughs, the microbiome, the gut-brain axis. I really like that. I learned something new today, and so thanks for joining us, Todd. Really
Thanks
appreciate
a lot,
that.
Todd.
All right, take care. That's all for today.
Sustainable material.